Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video, where today we will be completing the game with the Banette line. Now, I do have really high hopes for this Pokemon, specifically because I think it could beat the Gengar line. So, because of that, I'm going to be comparing these two Pokemon. So I suggest that if you're going to watch this, consider watching the Gengar line video first, just to get an idea of how Ghastly did. But with that being said, I think that it has the makings to do better, and that's mostly because of its stats and its move pool. It has 44 HP, 75 attack, 35 defense, 63 special attack, 33 special defense, and 45 speed, and gets access to quite a decent type coverage of moves, but to note, very similar to Ghastly's moves as well. But the biggest difference is that it gets Nightshade at level 13, and it's in the fast level up growth rate. So hopefully Nightshade will just keep doing more and more damage quicker. It does have a few downsides though. It doesn't get a solid attacking move until level 37, whereas Ghastly and Haunter got Shadow Punch at level 25, so I could definitely see it slowing down a bit. But I think that the gap it creates in the early game should make way for a lead that it will keep throughout the game. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it. So our Shuppet in particular has a sassy nature, raising its special defense and lowering its speed, which I don't think is all that great. However, with it being such a high level, I would assume getting closer to the end game, it should probably naturally outspeed everything anyway. And it has the Insomnia ability, which prevents sleep, so there are a few Pokemon throughout the game that like to put you to sleep, so it could be kind of helpful. And according to Bulbapedia, it gets Knockoff and Screech. Now Knockoff's only 20 base power, so it is really weak, but at least it can hit normal types. So the first thing we do is we go to the Tutor Lady and we pick up the move Mimic, because it will at least help with our damage output a little bit. And honestly, it didn't really struggle too much through the early game, and that's because it got access to the move Screech, which helped Mimic's damage, especially with a lot of Pokemon using Tackle by this point, and I got Nightshade at level 13. So I come into this battle fully prepared to completely destroy this old man. Now I take down his Abra, which is definitely the biggest threat he has. Nightshade looks to be a two-shot on the Horsey, so it's not really that big of a threat. So another Nightshade comes out, takes it down, and then the last is the Shroomish, who I assume would also be a two-shot. Nightshade, not quite. It's pretty close though. So had I gained an extra level or two, I would have been able to take it down. But with that, I beat him, and so far I have 0 losses. After losing a few times, I finally get to the Cypher base, and I decide to fight Green, because even though I don't think I'm able to take it down, the Pokemon he has are pretty low level, so they should all be at least 2 shots. So I can get a bit of experience from them, and I'm now up to level 17. And I guess I'll go ahead and start the rambling section of this video. If you are enjoying this video, consider liking, and with October slowly winding down now, and I only have 2 more videos after this, I do think I already have it planned what Pokemon I'm going to do, so thank you for all the comments down below suggesting Pokemon. And I got a few that, while I don't think are really spooky enough for the month, I will be doing probably right after October. And between Banette and a Duskull video, I decided Banette would be more interesting because of just how comparable it is to Gengar. And also, there's only so many ghost types up to Gen 3, so I kinda need to save some for next year if I'm still doing this. And speaking of next year, I would like to do a battle video between the Banette line and the Gengar line, because I think that with a year's worth of experience, I could really see this going both ways, as you'll see later on in the video. Not to spoil it too hard, but it's kind of close. So, I don't know. With that, I don't really have too much more to say. Keep putting Pokemon suggestions down below, I guess. They don't really need to be spooky anymore. Unless you want them to be. I can always put those on the backlog for next year. And yeah, as we're coming down to the battle with Grain, I actually lost this battle quite a few times, and that's because the C dot has either 41 or 42 health, and so it took quite a few attempts to just try to take it down in 2 hits, because at any lower level it's doing 15 or more damage with Shadow Wave. So it was definitely a bit of a struggle, and at one point I decided to try using Absorb just to heal up a little bit from the Lotad, which I do in this attempt here. I'm not sure if it actually does much, because you end up being probably about the same. But in this example, I end up with 33 health, so I know I'm able to survive a crit from the C-Dot if it had gotten it, and Nightshade takes it down now, and then it's just the Pineco left, which I know for a fact is a 2-shot, and Pineco goes down and we can enter the facility. So we get inside and we get our first mirror match against another Shuppet. I use Nightshade, and then it also uses Nightshade. So you can see that we're clearly using the same strategy here, but I'm much stronger, so I'm able to take it down. And then later on in the facility, I go ahead and catch the Carvana here, and that's because it has the Black Glasses item, which raised Dark-type moves by, I think, 10%. So that means that the knockoff is going to be ever so slightly stronger. Still really weak, though. Now that we are against the first boss of the game, Loverina, she leads with a Beautifly and a Love Disc. I go for Nightshade into the Beautifly, and it's going to be a 2-shot, so I take it down. I level up to level 32 and get access to the move Will-O-Wisp, which I'm going to teach right away. And then she sends out her Roselia, which is definitely the biggest threat here, because if it can set up Leech Seed, I'm going to lose pretty quickly, which it does. So I'm going to be losing a lot of health every turn. Now I decided to go for Mimic here, because if for some reason I can survive, I could set up the Leech Seed on one of her Pokemon, and then do another one on the other one, and effectively double the amount of HP I'm getting back. Doesn't work out though, I tried a couple more times. But it's clear that I just need to train a little bit, and so I go to Mount Battle to go do that. And at level 37, I get access to the move Feint Attack, which is a much needed upgrade from Knockoff. It's actually decent, and it always hits. And then at the same time, it also evolves into Banette, which will make the game hopefully much easier now. So, with a new Pokemon means new stats. It has 64 HP, 115 attack, 65 defense, 83 special attack, 63 special defense, and 65 speed. So it is still pretty slow. However, since it's going to be rising up in level a lot quicker, it should be able to keep a pretty decent level advantage and outspeed everything. And 115 attack is nothing to scoff at, especially once it gets a decent physical attack. Unfortunately, at this point, it still only has Nightshade, which is special. But, you know it, that 83 special attack should be enough to take down Loverina. So I go back in. Beautifly is a one-shot. Roselia is surprisingly not a one-shot here. And it misses Leech Seed. Okay, well, it goes down anyway. I guess I maybe could have done this at an earlier level had it just missed. I go for Feint Attack, and it's not quite a one-shot on the Delcatty either. Shadow Wave goes in, doing almost nothing, and I take it down. And then all that's left is the Love Disc. Feint Attack takes it down. Okay, well that took quite a few attempts, but it's still doing fairly well. And of course you can't have a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video without the obligatory Mirror Bee. Take it away, Mirror Bee. Oh yeah. Anyway, at the Real Game Tower, I go ahead and pick up my 2 favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect. And I go ahead and teach Hidden Power right away, which happens to be Hidden Power Water. Which isn't amazing, but it still has its uses. And over at the Tutor Lady, I pick up the move for Body Slam. And that's because Body Slam's just a very decent move all around. And on top of that, it uses my physical attack stats, so it's going to be doing more damage than Feint Attack would. So I go into the battle against Snaddle. I try to use Will-O-Wisp here, but it misses, and I get Rock Tomb for it, lowers my speed. I go for Body Slam, which isn't a one-shot on the Quagsire, which is unfortunate. So it gets off another Rock Tomb, so now I'm definitely slower than most of his Pokemon. Body Slam takes it down though, and then out comes Lunatone. Now Lunatone should be a one-shot with Feint Attack. It sets up Shadow Sky, and it is a one-shot. Okay, out comes Cast Form. Fruity Pebbles rain down. And I'm almost certain this is going to be a one-shot. Water Pulse doesn't really do too much to me. Shockwave also doesn't do too much to me. Body Slam's able to take down the Cast Form. Out comes Matang. Fruity Pebbles rain down. I'm down to 4 health, but unfortunately I get outsped and lose. Okay, well, at level 48 I get access to the move Shadow Ball, which I'm going to teach over Will-O-Wisp, because as much as I wanted to use Will-O-Wisp, it's kind of inaccurate and kind of hard to use. So after a little bit of inventory rearrangement, I take down the Quagsire, and then out comes Lunatone, and then I go for Shadow Ball into the Lunatone, which takes it down in a single hit. Out comes Cast Form. I go for Body Slam into it to take it down, and then his last Pokemon comes out, Matang. And the Shockwaves really aren't doing that much damage, so Lantern really isn't a threat at all. I'm able to one-shot the Matang, and one last Shadow Ball should do it. And we beat Snattle's second attempt, so pretty good. Before the next fight, I go ahead and teach Psychic over Feint Attack, because even though Feint Attack's good, it's getting a little weak. And we move on to Gonzap. Now usually he'd use Fake Out on the first turn, but because I'm a Ghost type, that won't actually hit, so I'm able to take down the Electrode right away and dodge a Lucky Paralysis. And the Feint Attacks from the Nuzleaf are doing quite a bit of damage, but I can take a few of them. I take down the Vileplume in a single hit, and I go for Shadow Ball into Nuzleaf to take it down. Might have been safer to go for Body Slam, but oh well. Anyway, out comes the Skarmory. I go for Shadow Ball, take down the Whiscash, and then the Skarmory definitely could be a threat because it resists all of my moves. I go for Shadow Ball, get a crit, and take it down in a single hit. With that, we move on to the next fight of the game against Gorgon. He leads with a Lairon and a Celio. I go for Shadow Ball to take down the Celio in a single hit. And then out comes Slowking, which actually is weak to Shadow Ball, so I go for it again, take it down. And then out comes Ursaring. Now, I did actually forget that Ursaring is just going to spam Protect because I'm a Ghost type and it doesn't have anything to hit me with. But anyway, a Protect fails and I'm able to take it down with a single Body Slam. Out comes Primeape. Lairon uses Earthquake, actually doing quite a bit of damage to the Primeape, so I know for a fact I'm able to take it down. And that really should have been Psychic, but oh well. And then out comes the Hypno. I go for Shadow Ball to take it down. And then it's just the Lairon left. Iron Tails aren't really doing that much damage. I go for Hidden Power here because it is super effective, and I beat Lairon. Now with that, we can finally move on to the last area of the game. And honestly, it's doing pretty good. Definitely not an A+ or S tier Pokemon, but it could definitely fall into the A if it goes fast enough. With that being said, we go into the fight against Lavrina. We take down her Gardevoir right away because we are a female. So we need to get rid of all the male Pokemon because they all have Attract. So I get rid of the Gardevoir and the Roselia, and then out comes Farfetch'd. Gorbis is going to just keep using Ice Beam, so as long as I don't get frozen, I should be okay. A Psychic takes down the Farfetch'd, and then out comes Altaria. Now, I think Altaria might be pretty hard to take down in a single hit, so I decide to take down the Gorbis at this point, just to make sure I don't get frozen. And Shadow Ball actually does take it down in a single hit, so I beat Lavrina on the first attempt. Okay, well, going through the Citydark Isle, I run into one Banette. Hello, Banette. And a second Banette. Hello, other Banette. Goodbye. And at the top of the mountain, I run into Snattle once again. I go for Shadow Ball into the Quagsire, which takes it down in a single hit. Out comes Scizor. Matang's using Psychic, and it's really doing almost no damage. So Matang is not a threat in the slightest. And Scizor actually misses a Steel Wing, so I'm not taking any extra damage. I take it down. Out comes Solrock, which should be a one-shot with Shadow Ball. And it is. Okay. Out comes Cast Form once again, which also should just be a one-shot with Body Slam once again. And then the real question is, how much damage is Starmie going to do, because I doubt I can outspeed it. Starmie is really quick. And just as I thought, I'm slower than it, but Shadow Ball's able to take it down, and it really doesn't do that much damage. So, one more Shadow Ball takes down the Metang, and I beat Snaddle on the first attempt. Nice. We move on to Ardos, who leads with a Swallow and an Alakazam. I take down the Alakazam, and then out comes Kingdra. And then I go for Shadow Ball into the Kingdra. Swallow goes for Shadow Break here, so unfortunately I might have a bad Swallow to work with who just spams Shadow Break. So I just decide to move on, and oh, it's actually using Shadow Half now. Okay, well that's a bit unfortunate. So now I'm a bit lower on health, and now my speed is dropped because I decided to move on to the Swallow to take it down. And I'm slower than the Electabuzz and lose. Okay, well, I think there's a pretty obvious thing I can do here. And that's teach Protect over Hidden Power, because it's really not useful anymore. And I forgot to record the first turn, but it's basically the same. Except the Swallow on the second turn decided to use Shadow Half instead of on the third, so I was caught a bit off guard. But luckily this does work well enough to where I can take down the Heracross now. And now I'm stuck in a bit of a bad situation because both these Pokemon have the potential to just take me down immediately. I go for Protect here, 2 Shadow Breaks, and I go for Shadow Ball, and Swallow goes for Shadow Half. I take down the Electabuzz because I guess I'm faster without my speed being dropped. And then it's just the Swallow and the Snorlax. I go for Body Slam, and I get a Paralysis. Doesn't get paralyzed, but it misses. I go for Protect here, and I take down the Snorlax because it's definitely a bigger threat. It has the potential to take me down in a single hit. And the Swallow goes for one last Shadow Half, and it goes down, so second attempt, pretty good. Next is Gorgon once again, and I go for Shadow Ball into the Slowking because it is super effective. Out comes Aggron. And I go for Shadow Ball here. I should have gone for Psychic because it is objectively better. But I didn't think about it until this turn, and I'm able to take it down with a crit, so I don't know if that was necessary or not. Out comes Walrein, which might not be a one-shot with Shadow Ball. Oh, it is. Okay, well that's a little bit surprising. Out comes Poliwrath, and the Ursaring does have Earthquake, which is something to note. I don't know why it hasn't used it so far. Anyway, I take down the Poliwrath, and it goes for Earthquake again. Okay, it does about half to Mr. Mime, so I decide to Protect here. Hopefully it just takes down its partner. It doesn't. Okay, well I go for Body Slam into it because he used Protect. It's only a 50-50 to actually Protect again. Anyway, I think what's happening here is that the AI knows well enough not to use another Earthquake to take down its own partner Pokemon, so it just starts using Protect. But a Body Slam takes it down, and we move on to Eldus. Now I can see this one definitely being a bit of a struggle because I don't have an Ice-type move to take down his dragons, but I am able to outspeed and take down his Manectric, so no Shadow Sky. And now that I've been intimidated, I'm not going to be doing nearly as much damage with Shadow Ball. Still, it might be my strongest move anyway because I do have Stab on it, and I get a crit and take down with Elements. Okay, well that's nice. Out comes Flygon. I go for Protect here, so I don't get hit by Aerial Ace, and I go for a Shadow Ball into Flygon, and it survives by just a thread. So it's clear that if I fail this battle, all I need is one more level or a better range to take it down. I go for Body Slam to finish it off though. Out goes Marowak. And Marowak's a bit scary because I don't know whether or not Shadow Ball or Psychic would be better. I decided to go for Shadow Ball here. And it's not quite a one-shot, so it is able to actually get off a Shadow End on me. It does about half my health, but that should be fine. I can heal up just a little bit before the next Pokemon comes out, and I take down the Marowak. So on this turn, because the Lapras is going to set up Shadow Sky, it's always best to just attack it, even though Aerial Ace does a little bit of damage. And Lapras is a 2-shot, which is good. So I will be able to take it down next turn before it can attack. And it goes down. And then all that's left is the Ninjask. Pretty Pebbles come down, and Shadow Ball should take it down. Bonk. Bye, Ninjask. Anyway, before the final fight, I decided to teach Thunderbolt over Body Slam, because it'll be effective against the birds. And we go into the fight against Shadow Lugia. Now, it is pretty tanky, so I doubt it will be one-shot by Shadow Ball. Never mind. Okay, well, we go into the Greevil fight. I go for Shadow Ball into the Moltres. It's one-shot, so that's good. And I outspeed. Rhydon misses a Shadow End. I go for Psychic into Rhydon, which hangs on by a thread as well. So I can see if I just use my rare candies, it'll be a one-shot. So I finish it off. And then out comes the Tauros. And I'm going to see how much Psychic actually does to it. Unfortunately, I do get hit by Shadow End, so my testing will probably end here. Psychic's not quite a one-shot on the Tauros, and I lose my first attempt. So I decide to use my rare candies, and on attempt number 3, we have this battle where I'm able to one-shot the Moltres just as before. And with the higher level, actually able to one-shot the Rhydon as well. Out comes Tauros, which is still a bit of a threat, but I do think it should be a one-shot with Psychic now. However, on this attempt I decide to actually keep the Tauros alive, and that's because I think that Shadow Sky isn't nearly as dangerous as the Executor getting off large bursts of damage. And because the Tauros is always going to set up Shadow Sky then Shadow Hold, so I get a few turns of not getting attacked. Anyway, I take down the Articuno in a single hit, which is a big deal. Tauros goes for Shadow Hold. This is now the third turn of Fruity Pebbles, so I go for Protect again. And I should only get hit once by the Tauros. However, I decide to actually take it down this turn, because I'd rather just get hit by the Zapdos. But it actually does quite a bit of damage to me, so I go for Protect here, because as long as I outspeed, I should be able to take it down. One Thunderbolt, and a second Thunderbolt. And Zapdos goes down, and we beat the game. So, let's go ahead and look at Banette's stats. It beat the game in 10 hours, 56 minutes, and 46 seconds at level 85, and only fainted 28 times, 9 of those to bosses, and 19 of those to random trainers, most of those being really early on, as you would expect. So, with that being said, it does actually beat Gengar in this ranking, specifically. Because I do think that if I were to do this again, it could definitely be closer. But in this particular instance, Banette has beaten it, and actually secured a spot really close to the top of B tier. It's not as good as Marowak, and it's actually really comparable to Mightyena, with a similar time, a similar amount of feints. It's a little higher leveled, but also that's because it's in the fast level up group, so I'm not really going to hold it too much against it. But the big thing that I give it over Mightyena is the fact that it hardly struggled with bosses at all. It only really had Laverina early on. And other than that, I guess Greevil took 3 attempts. So it definitely destroyed most of the bosses in the game. And I think overall it had a few distinct advantages. One, a solid stab move with Shadow Ball. Gengar had Shadow Ball, but it had a much lower attack stat, so it mostly relied on Thunderbolt and Psychic at the end. And on top of that, because it got Nightshade so much quicker, it didn't really have to worry about a lot of the same Pokemon that Gengar did. So it was able to just fly through the early game much quicker. So, with that being said, thank you for watching this video. And if you have any Pokemon suggestions, comment them down below. I'll definitely probably carry those on to November. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing. And bye!